Day.
Joining us now in the Element Well Studios, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Mississippi, Philip Gunn. Thanks for coming in, Mr. Speaker.
Hey, thank you for Gerard. Glad to be here today.
So, all sunny died now.
Hallelujah. That's right. Last night, it was a late night, but we finished up and were able to complete our work. So I think we did some great things this year. We can talk about some of those.
Yes, sir.
I think about an article that was written the day we convened on January the 4th that questioned whether or not the legislature could do all the weighty tasks that lay before it, all the things we had to do with redistricting and ARPA and income tax and teacher pay and broadband deployment and
medical marijuana.
And the article just listed out all of these things that were any of them in and of themselves could expend a lot of political capital. Any one of those issues you could take and spend weeks on. And there were like 7 or 9 issues that were listed, and lo and behold, we've done every one of them.
Yeah.
And I think that the legislature has done a tremendous work this session to meet every one of those issues, take them on, and produce legislation that is good legislation in every one of those arenas. The initiative was another one that came to mind. I mean, the list just goes on and on about all the things. Election integrity comes to mind. We did work in that arena as well. So we did a lot of good things, and I'm excited to be able to talk about those with you here today.
Well, it does seem like, Mr. Speaker, that it was one of the more active sessions in terms of high-profile matters in recent memory.
You're exactly right. And each of these items that I mentioned, like I said, were big-ticket items.
Yeah.
They weren't just routine in nature. The very first week, we in the House passed the income tax plan and a teacher pay plan. The income tax plan, which I want to give you credit, you were a big champion for that, and you analyzed that, and you were supportive of that. It's the largest tax cut in the history of our state for our citizens. And we argued long and hard that putting money or allowing people to keep more of their hard-earned money, putting money back in their pockets is a good thing. They can improve their quality of life, better provide for their children. Those dollars turn over in the community as they spend them. Businesses prosper as our citizens prosper. They have more money to give to their church. We cut the income tax when this thing is fully phased in by a third. That's huge. That's the largest tax cut in the state. And we still have more work to do. And as I have said numerous times, our goal is elimination. Now, this was a huge first step toward that goal. But we're going to continue to fight to eliminate. But we could not walk away from what ended up being the largest tax cut in the history of our state. So that's the first week of the session. We in the House passed that plan. Now, it was near the end of the session before we finally got it negotiated, but we got it done. Second thing we passed, teacher pay. Largest teacher pay raise in the history of our state. We are losing our teachers to other states. We have young people who are choosing not to go into the profession, and one of the main objections or reasons stated is because of starting pay. Mm-hmm. The plan that we passed pushed starting pay beyond the southeastern average and beyond the national average. That's a huge win for our educational community. And as we try to create more jobs and create that educated workforce, this helps put teachers in the classroom and hopefully give our students an opportunity to get that quality education. Then that was first week. Second week, we did the medical marijuana thing. We came forward with election integrity laws. We passed a law that prevents non-citizens from voting. We passed a law that prevents what we call the Zuckerberg's bill, mm-hmm. which prevents these billionaires who are trying to come in and affect the integrity of elections. It stops that. We did broadband deployment. We used passed a bill that hopefully will get broadband deployed throughout the state. Then we had the ARPA funds that we had to distribute. And we created a water and sewer program to help. About half of what we spent was deployed to do water and sewer around the state, rural water, stuff like that. Roads, bridges, we put some money there. We did a workforce development bill, which will hopefully increase workforce around the state. Did the Equal Pay Act, Those are just some of the things that come to mind as I sit here that were
critical race theory bill.
Critical race theory. We passed that one. All of those are significant policy moves, and it wasn't just one. We did about 9 different things this year and got them all across the finish line. The initiative we mentioned, we in the House passed that. It fell apart on the other end, but we got that done too. So those are just some of the highlights that we could probably take, the entire radio talking about any one of those. But wanted to be sure that the people understand that your legislature hit the ground running in January, and they didn't stop until last night, and we got it done. Going back to the tax thing, our budget currently is about $5.8 billion. We did a teacher pay raise on top of that, which is about $250 million, which takes us a little over $6 billion. And then there were some other things that we had included in there that took us to about $6.2 billion current spending. Mm-hmm. But we collected $7 billion from the taxpayers. Now, my contention has been we are taking in more money than we're spending. It is time to give some of that back to the taxpayers. And this has been one of the motivations for us in the House as we have tried to lead out on this effort to eliminate the income tax is that we're taking in more money than we're spending. And it's time to give some of that money back to the taxpayer. And the naysayers would even say, well, we need to use those additional dollars for roads and bridges and infrastructure. We did. We did use some of those dollars, but we don't need to use all those dollars. We need to give some of the money back to the taxpayers. This is a huge lick. This income tax plan that we passed puts us among the states that have a personal income tax. Now, we have to clarify that because 9 states do not have an income tax.
Right.
But among the 41 remaining states that have a personal income tax, we now have the 5th best marginal tax rate in the country. We also have the highest threshold before you start paying an income tax of any of those states. So under our plan, an individual you earn $18,300 before you ever start paying an income
as an
tax.
As
an individual, and that's double $36,600 for a married couple. Mm-hmm. That's the highest threshold in the country. Now that is tremendous help for the working people around our state, but it also positions, as you and I have talked about before, makes us competitive from a business standpoint. It now makes us attractive to people to jobs and industry who want to move to Mississippi or go to a no tax or low tax state. We're now in the ballpark. We're now in the conversation with the passage of this tax bill. And as we attempt to do more as we move on, I think next year we're going to have just as much money as we did this year. I would argue that it's time to chip away at it a little more.
Yeah.
And next year, maybe we can reduce the tax even a little more. We're going to continue to fight for that. Under the bill that we passed, we eliminate the 4% bracket immediately. And citizens may not understand the current tax structure, but right now your first $5,000 of income is exempt from taxation. Then you pay a 4% tax on what you make between $5,000 and $10,000, and then you pay a 5% tax on everything you make above $10,000. Under this plan, we have eliminated the 4% bracket immediately. This year, that's a $200 million tax break to the citizens right now, or when this goes into effect, which will be this tax year.
Right.
Then we are lowering the 5% bracket to 4% over a 3-year period of time, so about a third each year. Mm-hmm. If we continue that pattern, and each year we're able to chip away at a third of a percent, or a half of a percent, we'll have it eliminated in about 10 years.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Well, I have described it, Mr. Speaker, as a down payment on full income tax elimination.
Sir. That's a good way of describing it.
It's just a down payment. We wanted more. We wanted, as you indicated, you came on the program second day of the session, I think.
That is correct.
And talked about that. But understand how the sausage is made, as they said. And so what we got was a down payment, but we're not done. We're going to keep pushing.
That's exactly right. We still have more work to do, but we got to celebrate the victory that we got.
Agree.
Which is significant.
I agree. We got the Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, in the Element Well studios. We'll take a break right here on Middays. We'll come back and talk more about the 2022 legislative session. Stay with it. Darren in Jackson asks, and this is relevant to the income tax discussion, I make $100,000 a year. How much do I save in taxes now with this plan? So here's the way to figure it out, Darren. First, in 2023 for tax year 2023, which you would file in 24, you would get a $200 reduction because we're eliminating the 4% bracket. And then you would have to look at the subsequent years where we're chipping away at the 5% bracket, which taxes all income over $10,000. So in general, Darren, if you're an individual, you take $18,300 off that. That puts you down to $72,000. And at $72,000, ultimately, when it's fully implemented, you're going to save 1% of that. Is the way it would work out on the 5% bracket, which is $720.
We looked at, and I don't hold me to this, but I recall us doing the calculations on at full implementation, what would an individual receive, and I think it's around $800 a year now per taxpayer. Married couple, that's going to be double that.
That's
it's going to be $1,600 a year. Now, if you're a married couple, and let me defend the efforts of the House now. Keep in mind, the House of Representatives fought for full elimination, and our first plan that we rolled out did $1,300 a year per taxpayer, $2,600 per married couple. So we were much more aggressive in the plans, and as you know, we put out 5 or 6 different proposals, all of which were much more aggressive. But what we were able to get is basically cutting your tax into a third. And so an individual, I think, would keep around $800 a year. When this is fully implemented, $1,600 per married couple. So for a married couple, that's over $100 a month back into their pockets. That's another 2 tanks of gasoline. That's another bag of groceries. That's more clothes for your children. I've used the word transformative. I wanted a tax cut that made a difference in the lives of people, that transformed their lives. And this kind of tax break moves in that direction. I obviously want more. We plan to try to get more. But I think what we did get is something that's going to help people better provide for themselves. It's not you're not gonna be able to go out and buy a boat, but you will be able to put more food on the table, more clothes on your backs, and more gasoline in your car.
And like we said, I'll use that phrase, it's a down payment. We're going to continue to work on total elimination, and hopefully we will experience the sort of economic activity and revenue collections as a result of that will make the case for that.
Correct.
And that's the plan, and so we'll certainly be there supporting it. I also wanted to just point this out to you as well, Mr. Speaker. You made it very clear, even going back to the original bill in 2021, which of course, was the subject of the joint committee hearings. That was the bill, essentially, that was being discussed and being analyzed and presented and commented on by a number of different parties. And there are folks that say, well, gee, that was a better, in terms of savings, than this was. And I totally agree. But I want to compliment you and point out that you made it very clear, look, we're not married to this. If you got some ideas of how to adjust this to make it better or to address some of your concerns, and it seems like there were a lot of the various factions that had objections that didn't come out immediately and express those. It kind of delayed their objection reaction. But you continued to work on that and make adjustments to try to address all of the major objections to get something. And I think at this point, we just have to be resigned to the fact that this is what we had to do right now to get something going and get money in pockets.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, and that is correct. When we rolled this thing out in 2021, there were immediate concerns expressed by the business community, the manufacturers, automobile dealers, mobile home manufacturers, others. We met with every one of those groups, heard their concerns, and addressed the concerns.
Yeah.
We fixed their problems. And then there were other concerns raised by the Senate, worried about loss of revenue. Well, we worked to show that we would have no loss of revenue. Then there was concerns raised about, well, you're raising the sales tax. Well, we took that out.
Yeah.
And everybody who came forward with an objection, we fixed it.
Yeah.
And we knocked those objections down to the point that there was no reason left why we couldn't do this.
Agree.
And I made that statement at the Joint Legislative Budget Committee hearing about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we met to revise the budget. I made that statement. There's no reason left why we can't do this. And, of course, that afternoon and on Saturday, we got this deal done.
Yeah.
So we did say if anyone has a better proposal, we're open to it.
Yeah.
But no one came forward with a better proposal. They just continued to throw rocks at the ones that we had. But we fixed those concerns.
I agree.
Now we've got significant tax relief for our citizens, the largest tax cut in the history of the state.
So once fully implemented, about $500 million a year, I believe, right?
It actually, the number is going to be closer to $600 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, the number is 525.
Okay.
525 million.
Right.
What did I say? Billion? I meant to say million.
Yeah, million. I said $500 million. Same thing. Yeah. 525
million, but as these dollars stay into the pockets of the citizens, they're going to spend more. Income is going to go up, and we believe the sales tax revenue is going to go up. So projections are that it's going to be more like 575, closer to 6. And to some perspective, the total income tax production right now in the state of Mississippi is $1.8 billion. So when we say we're given a $600 million tax cut, that's why we say about a third
of the income tax revenue.
Right. That's correct.
The other big chunk of revenue comes from sales taxes, and a fair amount of that gets diverted back to the municipality. So I had a text from Leslie in Grenada. We really need to cut the car tag tax, and we should point out that is really set at the county local level. That money is used to fund county and municipal operations.
Yes, and in fact, we had that as one of our proposals, if you recall. Back in January, the plan that we passed included cutting the car tag in half.
Yeah.
And
but making the counties and cities whole as a result of that.
Yeah, we under the plan that we proposed, they would not suffer any loss of revenue. And that was incredibly popular. We passed that bill 107-4. I had 77 Republicans and about 32 Democrats, and only 4 people that voted against it. It was hugely popular.
Couldn't get it through the Senate, though.
And they just didn't like that proposal. Yeah. I spoke to a Lions Club somewhere one day, and I told them, I said, we're going to eliminate your income tax, which is $1.8 billion. And they sat there. And I said, we're going to cut your groceries in half, which is about $220 million. And they sat there. And I said, we're going to cut your car tag in half, which is about $150 million, and they all applauded at that. So of the 3 proposals, it was the least amount, but it was the most popular.
Yeah, and all states have various approaches and various schemes they use to raise money to fund their governments, and you could do a contrast across all those various tax mechanisms and see all kinds of nuances between that. In Tennessee, of course, which has no income tax, does have an average 9.14% sales tax.
They do.
So even though we had proposed in the original bill last year increasing ours to 9%, we would still be less than the neighboring states.
Less than them. And as I talk to people across the northern part of the state, as you know, Tennessee does not have an income tax, whereas Alabama, Louisiana, and Arkansas do. So they pop you. Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas pop you on what you make, and they pop you on what you buy.
Right.
Their sales tax is 9.5, I think, in those 3 states, as is Tennessee.
Yep.
But the people along north Mississippi, DeSoto County to Corinth, as I've gone up to that part of the state and I've spoken about this, they will tell me we have the state of Tennessee beat at every measure.
Yeah.
At least our friends across the state line, especially DeSoto County. Right across the state line is Memphis. We have better schools than Memphis. We have lower crime than Memphis. We have better neighborhoods, better infrastructure, better quality of life, more entertainment venues. There is but one thing they have us beat on, and that's income tax. And there are wealthy Mississippians living across that state line to keep their income. If we get rid of the income tax, and these are their words, not mine. They said, North Mississippi will explode in economic prosperity. All those people will come home because there's no reason left for them to stay in Tennessee.
Totally agree.
And you could make that same argument with down around Mobile, Alabama, or over north towards New Orleans or Vicksburg or Meridian or wherever. You've got a tremendous attraction to our state once we get rid of the income tax.
Mr. Speaker, good to see you. Appreciate all the efforts, sir, in getting meaningful tax reform done and so many of these other good bills passed as well. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me on, Gerard.
You got it. Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, has been our guest here on Middays. We'll come right back.